Options feel easy, real choice feels emotionally risky. And that is the cruel psychology that can make you feel like you're watching someone treat strangers better than the person who actually loved them. It can make you feel like the one who was real, loyal, patient, consistent, somehow became the one they stopped trying for. And it cuts deep, because it doesn't just hurt your heart. It attacks your dignity. You start thinking, why am I the one they can't show up for? Why do they text everyone else back faster? Why do they flirt with people who mean nothing, but go cold with the person who meant everything? And I need you to hear this without letting it turn into self-blame. When an avoidant treats options better than their real choice, it's often not because the option is better. It's because the option feels safer. Safe, not in the way love should be safe, but safe in the avoidant way. Safe because it doesn't require depth. Safe because it doesn't require consistency. Safe because it doesn't require the kind of emotional presence that exposes their fears. Options are light. Options are casual. Options come with low stakes. Options don't see their flaws. Options don't ask for repair. Options don't hold them accountable. Options don't reflect their emotional avoidance back to them. But you do. And that is why real choice feels risky. Because with you, they can't just perform, they have to be real. With you, they can't just charm, they have to sustain. With you, they can't just enjoy the moment, they have to show up after the moment. With you, they can't just disappear and pretend it meant nothing, because it did mean something. And meaning is exactly what triggers the avoidant nervous system. A dismissive avoidant often experiences emotional closeness as exposure. Exposure feels like being seen. Being seen feels like being judged. Being judged feels like being vulnerable. And vulnerability feels like danger. So when a connection becomes real, when you start becoming the one, their defenses activate. Not because you did something wrong, but because the stakes are higher, and higher stakes feel like pressure. And it's important to understand what pressure means in this context. It doesn't always mean you're demanding. Sometimes you're simply present. Sometimes you're simply consistent. Sometimes you're simply emotionally available. Sometimes you simply want a relationship that has clarity. And for a secure person, that feels normal. For an avoidant, that can feel like a spotlight on all the places they don't know how to show up. So they do something that looks backwards. They lean away from the person who matters more. They treat the option better because the option doesn't challenge their identity. The option doesn't make them face their limitations. The option doesn't make them feel like they could fail someone important. The option is where they can stay in control. And control is the currency of avoidant safety. With options, they can be charming without commitment. With options, they can be attentive without accountability. With options, they can be warm without being insistent. With options, they can disappear without consequence, because nothing was defined. But with the real choice, there are consequences, because love is real enough to have impact. And impact triggers shame. Shame triggers withdrawal. Withdrawal becomes distance. Distance becomes the place they feel safe again. So, you end up in this painful position, where the person who claims you matter treats you like you're the hardest person to love. And you start trying to fix it by becoming more like the option. You try to be lighter, cooler, less emotional, less honest, less direct. You start trying to make yourself low stakes. You start thinking, if I ask for less, they'll give more. If I need less, they'll stay. If I'm easier, they'll choose me. But here is the brutal truth. Becoming an option doesn't make someone treat you like a choice. It just makes it easier for them to keep you without growing. Because the reason they treat options well is because options don't require growth. You do. You require emotional maturity. You require consistency. You require the courage to stay present when it's uncomfortable. You require the ability to repair after conflict. And that is exactly what an avoidant is trying to avoid. So the goal is not to become less so they can stay comfortable. The goal is to understand that their behavior is about risk, not your worth. You are not being treated poorly because you are unlovable. You are being treated poorly because you are close enough to matter, and they don't know how to handle mattering without panicking. That's why you can feel them pull away right after a great date. Right after intimacy. Right after a moment of closeness where you thought, finally, this is real. Because closeness can trigger fear. The better it feels, the more exposed they feel. The more exposed they feel, the more they want to regain control. And regaining control often looks like distancing from the person who just made them feel something. So you start blaming yourself for their fear. And that is the part I want you to stop. Stop asking, what did I do wrong? And start asking, what does their pattern reveal? Because the pattern reveals that they can show effort when it's easy, but struggle when it's real. They can perform when it's low stakes, but panic when it's high stakes. They can chase attention, but struggle with intimacy. And if that's true, then the solution is not you working harder. The solution is you protecting yourself. Because love cannot be built on you shrinking yourself into an option just to keep someone from feeling risk. A relationship cannot be built on you pretending you don't need consistency. A future cannot be built on you tolerating emotional whiplash while they flirt with low-stakes connection to feel in control. So what do you do with this truth? You stop competing. You stop measuring yourself against the option. You stop stalking their attention and turning it into a ranking of your value. You stop thinking, if I was prettier, cooler, smarter, more detached, they'd treat me better. No, they just feel safer avoiding intimacy with you too. Instead, you become the kind of person who makes real choice require real behavior. You become calm, but firm. You become loving, but not available for inconsistency. You stop trying to win someone who is comfortable giving their best to people who mean less. Because that is not a compliment, that is emotional immaturity. And this is where your self-respect becomes your heartbreak's medicine. Because once you understand the psychology, you stop taking it personally, but you also stop tolerating it. You can have compassion for their fear without volunteering your life to it. You can understand their nervous system without becoming its casualty. Options feel easy, real choice feels risky, and that risk exposes who is ready for love and who is only ready for attention. So if someone treats options better than you, don't chase harder. Don't shrink. Don't audition. Hold your standards, hold your dignity, and let their behavior answer the only question that matters. Are they capable of loving you in a way that doesn't punish you for being real? They perform for people they don't have to maintain, and that can feel like the most insulting kind of heartbreak, because it makes you feel like you got the real them, the cold parts, the inconsistent parts, the disappearing parts, while strangers got the charming version, the attentive version, the version that texts back fast and laughs easily, and acts like connection is simple. And you sit there thinking, why did I get the hardest version? Why did I get the version that makes me doubt myself? Why did everyone else get the best of them, and I got the leftovers? But here's the psychology that hurts and heals at the same time. Performing is easier than sustaining. Performing is energy for a moment, sustaining is character over time, and a dismissive avoidant can often perform beautifully when the stakes are low, because low stakes don't demand depth. Low stakes don't demand repair. Low stakes don't demand consistency when life gets uncomfortable. Low stakes let them show up when it feels fun and vanish when it feels real. Low stakes allow them to be impressive without being accountable. So you watch them light up for someone new. You watch them be playful, responsive, engaged. You watch them do the thing they told you they can't do: communicate, plan, flirt, show effort. And it makes you feel like you were the problem. It makes you feel like you weren't worth the effort. It makes you feel like you asked for too much. But the truth is, they weren't giving that person deeper love. They were giving them a lighter version of themselves. Because with someone new, they get to stay on the surface. They get to be admired without being known. They get to be desired without being depended on. They get to enjoy the dopamine of attention without the vulnerability of intimacy. They get to show up in the way that feels safest to them: charming, confident, fun, uncomplicated. And that is why it looks like they treat options better. Options don't require maintenance. Maintenance means being consistent even when you're stressed. Maintenance means communicating when you don't feel like it. Maintenance means staying present when the other person is emotional. Maintenance means repairing after conflict. Maintenance means being seen in your flaws and still choosing to show up. And this is where avoidants struggle, because maintenance feels like responsibility, and responsibility feels like pressure, and pressure triggers their fear of being trapped, their fear of being judged, their fear of failing someone who matters. So with you, the person who became real, the person who started to matter, the person who started to feel like a true bond, they couldn't just perform, they had to sustain. And sustaining meant they would have to keep choosing you even when the high faded, even when the honeymoon energy settled, even when you needed something more than charm. So their nervous system did what it has learned to do. It protected itself. It pulled back. It created distance. It reduced expectations by creating confusion. Because confusion is a form of control. When things are unclear, they don't have to commit to being consistent. When things are vague, they can keep their freedom. When things are undefined, they can escape responsibility and still claim they didn't do anything wrong. And then, when someone new enters the picture, they suddenly look better, because newness allows them to keep performing. Newness allows them to avoid maintenance. Newness allows them to feel powerful again. Newness makes them feel desired without being required. And if you're honest, this is why it stings so much, because you were asking for maintenance. You were asking for something that could last. You were asking for a relationship, not a performance. And when you ask for a relationship from someone who is only skilled at performance, they will start treating you like you're the one making it hard. They'll say you're too intense. They'll say you're pressuring them. They'll say you're overthinking. They'll say you want too much. But what you wanted was not too much. What you wanted was too real. Because real love is maintained, not performed. Real love is built in boring moments, not just exciting ones. Real love shows up on random Tuesdays, not just romantic nights. Real love is the ability to stay, not just the ability to charm. So when you see them performing for others, it's important to stop making it a comparison about your value. It's not that you were less deserving, it's that you asked for more truth. And truth is what exposes them. Truth is what triggers their defenses. Truth is what removes their mask, because in a real relationship, you cannot stay impressive forever. You have to become honest. And that honesty is where avoidants panic, because honesty requires vulnerability. It requires admitting needs. It requires admitting fears. It requires admitting faults. It requires being seen as imperfect. And a dismissive avoidant often doesn't know how to do that without feeling ashamed. So instead of risking shame, they retreat. Instead of risking being seen, they disappear. Instead of risking failing you, they lower the stakes by keeping you at a distance. So you get the paradox. They perform for people they don't have to maintain. And they withdraw from the person they actually might care about more, because caring makes it real. And I know your heart wants to scream, then why don't they just choose real? Why don't they grow? Why don't they fight for it? And the answer is, because growth requires discomfort, and avoidants have trained themselves to escape discomfort rather than move through it. But you cannot build your life around someone's willingness to grow someday. You cannot pause your healing, because they might become ready later. You cannot keep accepting crumbs, because you've seen them perform a feast for someone else, because performance is not a promise, it's a moment. So this is where you reclaim your power. You stop competing with performance by trying to be more impressive. You stop trying to be easier, cooler, more detached so they can keep the mask on. You stop trying to win the version of them that only exists when nothing is required of them. Instead, you become the kind of person who values maintenance over charm. You become the kind of person who sees consistency as the highest form of romance. You become the kind of person who understands that the best love is not the love that dazzles in the beginning, it's the love that stays when the novelty is gone. And if they want to perform elsewhere, let them. Let them collect low-stakes admiration. Let them chase dopamine. Let them keep running from intimacy. But you do not have to stand there watching and thinking it means you are not enough. It means you were asking for the truth. And if the truth makes someone retreat, the truth didn't ruin love, it revealed capacity. So don't let their performance confuse you. Don't let it make you smaller. Don't let it make you beg to be treated like an option so they'll be nicer. You were never meant to be low stakes. You were meant to be held with steady hands. And the right person will not need a new audience to show effort. They will show effort where it matters most, with the person they claim is their choice. The real choice triggers their deepest fear, being responsible for love. And that is why you can be the person they care about most, and still feel like you are the one they punish with distance. You can be the one who shows up, the one who stays consistent, the one who loves sincerely, and somehow you end up being the one who gets silence, mixed signals, withdrawal. The emotional doors closing right when you thought things were finally opening. And it feels personal. It feels like rejection. It feels like you weren't enough. But for many avoidants, the person who becomes real is the person who becomes scary. Because real means stakes. Real means you matter enough to hurt them. Real means they could fail you. Real means they could disappoint you. Real means you could ask for something they don't know how to give. Real means they can no longer hide behind charm and chemistry. They have to show character. And character is where responsibility lives. A dismissive avoidant may look independent, strong, rational, unbothered. But underneath that presentation is often a nervous system that learned a brutal lesson early. Needing people is dangerous. Depending on people is dangerous. Being seen is dangerous. If I attach, I lose control. If I attach, I can be rejected. If I attach, I can be shamed. So they build a life where they can stay functional without needing anyone. And they call it independence, but often it's protection. So, when you come along and you don't just flirt, you connect. You don't just entertain, you care. You don't just enjoy them, you actually see them. You become a mirror, and mirrors can feel terrifying to someone who survives by staying emotionally unseen. Because being responsible for love means being responsible for impact. It means your choices affect someone. It means your silence hurts someone. It means your withdrawal has consequences. It means you can't just do whatever you feel in the moment and call it freedom, because there is now a person who feels you. And that is where their fear lives. So instead of leaning in, they start managing your closeness. They start rationing their availability. They start giving you enough to keep you attached, but not enough to feel trapped. They start pulling away right after intimacy, right after a deep conversation, right after a beautiful moment that should have brought you closer. And you sit there confused, thinking, why does closeness push them away? Because closeness reminds them, I'm responsible now. If I keep going, she'll expect consistency. If I keep going, I'll have to show up when it's hard. If I keep going, I can't hide. If I keep going, I might hurt her, and I might have to face myself. And facing themselves is what they avoid most. This is also why they can treat options better. With options, the emotional impact is low. They can be charming and then disappear without guilt. They can text quickly and then fade without consequence. They can enjoy the attention without carrying the weight of being responsible for someone's heart. But with the real choice, your heart becomes real to them, even if they don't admit it, and that realness brings up shame. Because if they can't meet you, they have to confront the possibility that they are emotionally inadequate. And rather than sit in that shame and grow, they often choose the shortcut, distance. Distance lets them breathe. Distance lets them feel in control. Distance lets them avoid the feeling of being the one who failed. So they pull away, not because you are unworthy, but because you are close enough to reveal what they can't sustain. And this is where your heart gets trapped, because you start trying to reduce the fear by becoming less. You try to become less needy, less emotional, less honest, less direct. You start acting like you don't care as much, because you think it will make them feel safer. You start carrying the relationship gently, like it's glass, terrified that one wrong sentence will make them vanish. But look at what that does to you. It makes you walk on eggshells in your own love life. It makes you silence yourself. It makes you shrink your needs. It makes you turn intimacy into a performance. And the tragedy is, you start thinking this is what love requires. No, this is what avoidance requires. Love requires safety. Love requires communication. Love requires accountability. Love requires the willingness to be responsible for impact. So what happens when you become their real choice is you activate the place where they have to choose between intimacy and control. And many avoidants choose control first. They choose what feels safe in the short term. They choose what protects them from feeling exposed. They choose what keeps them from having to face the truth. That love is not just a feeling, it's responsibility. Now, I need you to hear this carefully. Understanding this doesn't mean you accept it. It doesn't mean you wait forever. It doesn't mean you become their therapist. It doesn't mean you keep proving you're safe until they finally show up. Because you cannot love someone into emotional responsibility. They either choose it or they don't. And the only power you have, the only power that protects your heart, is your standard. Your standard says, I want a relationship with someone who can be responsible for love. Someone who can hold impact. Someone who can repair. Someone who can communicate. Someone who doesn't punish me for being real. Because your realness is not the problem. Your needs are not the problem. Your desire for consistency is not the problem. The problem is that you are offering real love to someone who panics at real love. So stop competing with options. Stop trying to be low stakes. Stop trying to be the easy girl so they don't feel pressure. Because being the easy girl is not the prize, it's the trap. The prize is being the cherished woman who is met with steady effort. The woman who is loved out loud. The woman who doesn't have to pretend she has no needs to keep someone from running. And if they can't do that, let them go with compassion, but let them go. Because you deserve a love that does not treat responsibility like a threat. You deserve a love where someone is proud to be responsible for your heart, proud to protect it, proud to show up, proud to stay. The real choice triggers their deepest fear, and that fear can make them treat you like the hardest person to love. But your job is not to become smaller to soothe their fear. Your job is to stay true to yourself and choose the kind of love that chooses you back consistently. Not just when it's easy, not just when it's exciting, but when it's real. It's not your value, it's their nervous system strategy. And I need you to let that truth land in the deepest part of you. Because this is where your self-worth has been getting bruised. When you watch an avoidant treat options with more excitement, more politeness, more attention, while treating you with distance, delays, An emotional coldness. Your mind naturally tries to solve it by turning inward. You start asking, what's wrong with me? What did I do? Why wasn't I enough? Why can they show effort for someone else but not for me? And that question feels so personal that it becomes shame. It becomes the kind of shame that makes you smaller. It makes you quieter. It makes you less honest. It makes you more willing to accept crumbs because you think you have to earn your place. But the psychology is different. It is not a ranking system of your worth. It's a safety system of their nervous system. Avoidant behavior often has less to do with attraction and more to do with threat perception. Not threat like danger, threat like emotional exposure, threat like vulnerability, threat like being needed, threat like having to show up consistently, threat like the risk of failing someone who matters. For a dismissive avoidant, closeness can feel like losing control, and losing control in their body can feel like the beginning of pain. So they build strategies to stay regulated. They keep things light. They keep things casual. They keep people at a distance. They choose connection that doesn't require depth. They pick situations where they can be charming without being accountable, and that is why options often get better treatment. Options are safe distance. Options are low-stakes attention. Options are connection without consequence. Options are a place where they can be adored without being known. But you, the real choice, are not low stakes. You are real. You are presence. You are consistency. You are intimacy. You are impact. And impact is what their nervous system tries to avoid, because impact means responsibility. This is why they can look emotionally generous to people who don't require much, and emotionally stingy with the person who actually matters. It looks cruel, but underneath it is fear. Fear of being responsible for love. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being seen as flawed. Fear of being asked for consistency and failing at it. So instead of rising to the moment, they retreat from it. And you feel that retreat is rejection, but it's more accurate to call it self-protection. Their nervous system is not thinking, she doesn't deserve effort. Their nervous system is thinking, closeness is pressure, pressure is danger, get distance. And the tragedy is that you end up paying for their fear by doubting your own worth. This is why I'm telling you, don't let their coping mechanism become your self-concept. Because you are not being treated like an option, because you are optional. You are being treated like an option, because options are the only kind of connection their nervous system can handle without panic. Your presence asks them to be real. Your love asks them to be consistent. Your honesty asks them to be accountable. And those are not weaknesses in you, those are strengths. But to an avoidant, strengths can feel like pressure because they require response. So they respond by pulling away, by delaying, by becoming vague, by giving just enough, by keeping you in a place where you are not fully chosen. Because fully choosing you would mean fully showing up, and fully showing up would mean vulnerability. And this is where you have to be careful, because once you understand the psychology, you might try to adapt by becoming less. You might try to become more like the option. You might try to be low stakes. You might try to be the girl who doesn't ask for clarity, the girl who doesn't need reassurance, the girl who is cool with inconsistency. You might try to remove pressure by removing your needs. But removing your needs doesn't create love. It creates a place where you can be tolerated. And you are not here to be tolerated. You are here to be cherished. You are here to be loved in a way that doesn't require you to hide your humanity. So yes, it's their strategy, not your value. But this does not mean you excuse it. It means you stop personalizing it, and you start responding with standards. You respond by refusing to compete with options. You respond by refusing to audition for attention. You respond by refusing to accept crumbs as proof. You respond by requiring consistency, because the moment you require consistency, you force the truth to surface. You stop letting them hide behind charm. You stop letting them hide behind, I'm busy. You stop letting them hide behind vagueness. You stop letting them keep you in the grey zone where your heart is always waiting. And what happens then is one of two things. If they have the capacity and willingness, they step up. They begin to communicate. They begin to show up consistently. They begin to take responsibility for the impact of their behavior. They begin to meet you in the kind of relationship you actually deserve. If they don't have the capacity, they step out. They withdraw more. They label you as demanding. They choose the easier, lower stakes connections. They return to the world of options where they can feel safe without growing. And if they step out, that is not your failure. That is information. It's information that they cannot love you the way you need to be loved. It's information that your presence was too real for their strategy. It's information that their fear is stronger than their willingness. And I know that hurts, because you wanted them to choose you. You wanted to be the exception. You wanted to be the one who finally made them stay. But you cannot heal someone's nervous system by sacrificing your own. You cannot make them feel safe by living in unsafety. So your healing is releasing the belief that their behavior measures you. It doesn't. Their behavior measures their capacity. Their behavior measures their readiness. Their behavior measures their emotional maturity. And when you stop taking it as a verdict on your value, you stop doing the most dangerous thing of all. You stop shrinking. Because you were never too much. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the wrong nervous system for the right thing. So let this be the shift. You stop asking, why do they treat options better? And you start saying, I will not accept being treated like an option. You stop chasing their attention and you start choosing your peace. You stop competing with low-stakes connections and you start requiring high-integrity love. And that is what changes everything, not because it forces them to become different, but because it returns you to yourself. It returns you to the kind of self-respect that says, I understand your fear and I still choose a love that can meet me. I understand your strategy and I still refuse to be harmed by it. I understand your pattern and I still deserve consistency. Because the truth is, your value has never been the question. The question has always been, are they capable of loving a person like you without running? And if the answer is no, you don't try to become less valuable. You simply walk toward the love that doesn't require you to doubt yourself to receive it.